Professor Schiller isn't just a universe hopper, he's a psychological predator playing 5D chess across realities. After emotionally dismantling Tony Stark with a single, weaponized truth, he slipped back to DC, leaving a bewildered Nick Fury in his wake. In Gotham, he's turned his attention to a far more primal psyche, a young, arrogant Bruce Wayne, barely comfortable in his first-generation Batsuit. Stealing a prototype fear toxin from an unsuspecting Jonathan Crane, Schiller isn't creating chaos. He's conducting a brutal form of therapy. He orchestrated a devastating object lesson, forcing Batman to see how his black and white crusade could create more suffering than it solved, shattering the hero's savior complex with the tragic fate of a single beggar. Now, as disappearances plague the Morrison district, the work of the future Scarecrow, Schiller has masterfully framed himself as the prime suspect. He isn't fighting Batman with fists. He's systematically deconstructing his entire mission, forcing the fledgling hero to question the very foundation of his war on crime. This isn't a battle for Gotham's streets. It's a war for Batman's soul, and the Professor is holding the scalpel. The air of a rainy Gotham night was thick with the stench of rust and rot. A heavy silence had fallen between Gordon and Batman after they emerged from the church basement, a tomb for dozens of souls. The darkness was a tangible tide, crashing against any spirit that dared to resist it. Especially Batman's. This was his first major case as a vigilante, and the profound evil he had witnessed had shaken him, making him question himself for the first time. Perhaps Schiller was right. Perhaps he truly wasn't ready. Here, immense physical strength was merely a tool for survival. Saving this city required something far more. His thoughts in turmoil, he rounded a corner, and his gaze locked onto a figure. There, on a second-floor balcony, stood Professor Schiller Rodriguez, holding a black umbrella. Rain dripped from its edge, spreading a dark, wet circle at his feet. It was the exact spot where the murdered beggar had once huddled. An absurd, white-hot rage ignited within Batman. How dare this criminal, this butcher of dozens, stand there so calmly? By what right was he so indifferent to life? Suppressed emotion erupted into furious power. As Gordon watched in astonishment, Batman's form shot up the slick wall like a black thunderbolt, landing heavily on the balcony 2 meters high. Rainwater sprayed from the edges of his cape. "Your judgment has come, murderer." Batman's voice was a chilling rasp, as if drawn from the depths of hell. Schiller turned slowly, his face a placid mask. He even had the audacity to ask with detached curiosity, "Oh, did you find the evidence you were looking for?" Batman ground out the words, "Of course, enough to send you to the electric chair." Suddenly Schiller laughed. The sound was unnervingly clear in the rainy night, edged with a clinical, cold derision. "How ludicrous," he said, his tone deceptively light. "You're still thinking about judging me. The GCPD should award you a medal for good citizenship. You truly are a great policeman." If only such a great policeman had been there when your parents were murdered, found the killer's evidence, and brought him to trial. That would have been wonderful, wouldn't it? That is what you believe, is it not? You don't trust the police, you don't trust the courts, yet you remain fixated on finding evidence, attempting to use the procedural justice of the legal system to condemn me. Don't you find that paradoxical? You want to prove I broke the law, Batman, yet your own actions are, in themselves, a violation of the law. If I deserve judgment, so do you. You are using one crime to prove another. Isn't that ironic? Schiller's voice sharpened, each word a hammer blow to Batman's heart. You believe you have the power to enact your own revenge on criminals, but in the end, you are still just an ordinary man, domesticated by this orderly society. You're still talking about evidence, still clamoring for a trial. If you cannot cast these things aside, the shackles of order imposed upon you, the stale concepts of law and procedure rotting in your mind, you will never achieve the justice you seek. Schiller stepped forward, leaning in. His umbrella tilted, revealing eyes that seemed to pierce through everything. He stared into the lenses of Batman's cowl and spoke, enunciating every word. "Bruce, the law is not justice. You are. Gotham's laws did not save your parents, just as they did not save the dozens of missing people. As long as you cling to any pointless fantasy about the system, you will never become the true Batman." The words struck home. Batman's arm began to tremble violently. The veins on the back of the hand gripping a batarang bulged, rage threatening to incinerate his reason. Schiller's words were a soul-crushing vivisection, laying bare the deepest conflict in his heart. A man betrayed by the law, yet stubbornly trying to become its champion. "You want me to dispense my own justice?" Batman asked, his voice hoarse. In the next second, he raised his arm, a black pistol appearing in his grip, its cold muzzle pressed firmly against Schiller's forehead. Schiller's expression remained terrifyingly calm. Seemingly oblivious to the threat of death, he asked mildly, "You still haven't answered me. What is this evidence you found?" "In the church basement, on the edge of a crate. You left behind soil and a leaf from a North American red pine. The only ones in the city are at Gotham University." Schiller let out a soft chuckle. "And what does that prove?" "It proves you're the killer," Batman snarled. "Is that so?" Schiller countered, his tone analytical. "A university professor appears without reason in the Monson district, acting suspiciously. You just so happen to find physical evidence from Gotham University at the crime scene. Therefore, I must be the murderer. What? Rigorous deduction." His dismissive tone, his utter lack of remorse, finally detonated Batman's fury. Just as his finger tightened on the trigger, Gordon's desperate, raw shout echoed from below. "Stop! Put the gun down!" The roar caused a fractional hesitation. In that instant, Schiller flicked his wrist, and a small black memory card clattered onto the floor between them. Schiller's voice was laced with mockery. "Incontrovertible proof. The killer was at Gotham University, and I am a professor there. Yes, truly incontrovertible. How you must have wished, when your parents died, that someone like you had been there, someone who could put a bullet in the killer based on such incontrovertible proof." "Don't talk about my parents." Batman's voice shook uncontrollably. "You criminal." "You've noticed a few similarities," Schiller interrupted, "but your rage has made you ignore far more differences. For instance, I have no background in chemistry or biology. I have also consulted on numerous serial killer investigations. My counter-surveillance awareness is not so poor that I would fail to clean my own footprints, and more importantly," Schiller's gaze fell to the memory card on the ground, "my evidence is a great deal more incontrovertible than yours." Gordon's arrival was a bucket of cold water on Batman's boiling rage. As rationality returned, he felt the shirt beneath his armor was soaked in a cold sweat. He warily picked up the memory card and inserted it into a microcomputer on his gauntlet. A holographic projection bloomed in the rain-swept darkness. By now Gordon had scrambled onto the balcony. He saw the projection, a thin, small man in a plaid shirt furtively climbing onto an air-conditioning unit, feeding a hose through a window. Inside, figures slumped to the floor as if their bones had been stolen. The man then jumped down, entered the building, and emerged moments later, dragging 2 heavy trunks. He loaded them onto a trailer and vanished into the night. Gordon shouted, "Of course. I remember now, when we were registering the missing. Most victims lived on lower floors, and nearly all their apartments had balconies." He whirled, glaring furiously at Batman. "I was wrong about you. You were about to shoot him. Do you have any idea you almost killed an innocent man?" Batman stared silently at the projection. It didn't take a detective to see the killer's physique was worlds apart from Schiller's. Schiller was nearly 6'3", tall and lean. The man in the video was 5'7" at best, and couldn't have weighed more than 130 pounds. "Professor Jonathan is such a nice man. That's what you thought, wasn't it?" Schiller's voice cut in again, calm and cruel. "Because he doesn't check homework, He's gentle with his students, and he never fails anyone, but I'm different. I'm the difficult professor, always nitpicking assignments, springing quizzes, and threatening every student with failure. So of course I must be the murderer, and he isn't. After all, how could a man so meek, so silent, so thin and small, possibly be a serial killer? Stop talking. Batman's voice was a faint tremor. He thought of the beggar again, the faint stain on the wall still visible in his periphery. A tidal wave of guilt and shame engulfed him. Gordon's tirade was salt in the wound. I don't care what kind of freak you are, running around in spandex making a mess, but you nearly killed a good man. What's your personal problem with him? Settle your own damn scores, don't interfere with a police investigation. Aren't we busy enough? You were going to kill a man in front of me. You want me to slap the cuffs on you and drag you to a cell myself. Overworked and frayed, Gordon waved a dismissive hand. Give me the drive, spandex, and you, sir, please come with me. You seem to know who the killer is. We need leads. Batman remained silent, mechanically extending his arm and offering the microcomputer to Gordon. He was beginning to realize that his grand, self-assured debut was a complete farce. The very man he had judged a criminal was the one who had provided the most crucial piece of evidence. Schiller said nothing more, turning to leave with Gordon. Batman stood frozen, watching Gotham's ceaseless reign, feeling himself being slowly devoured by the cold, indifferent city. Just as Schiller stepped off the balcony, he heard a voice from behind, almost too quiet to hear. I'm sorry, Professor. Schiller's stride faltered. He felt a jolt of disbelief. What? What did he just say? Did Batman apologize? Schiller turned back, incredulous. Batman stood in the deep shadow of the building, a single sliver of light catching his cowl, outlining his tightly pressed lips. A powerful sense of the absurd washed over Schiller. He was Batman. And Batman was always right. Batman never apologized. In the face of any doubt, he would only ever say, because I'm Batman. The paranoid, obsessive Dark Knight from the comics, the one with a contingency plan for every ally, the Batman who trusted no one, not even himself. How could that man possibly apologize? In that moment, Schiller realized he held a deep-seated prejudice against this man. He had assumed Batman should be a perfect copy of the character in the comics. He wanted the Bruce Wayne before him to grow into that dark, infallible symbol as quickly as possible. But he was wrong. This young Batman was not infallible, and when he knew he was wrong, he still felt remorse. Schiller had intended to teach the young Batman a lesson. Do not be prejudiced. Do not judge a book by its cover. Do not let rage cloud your judgment. But he suddenly wondered what right he had to lecture him. Wasn't he also beholden to stereotypes, forcibly trying to fit a living, breathing person into the mold of a comic book character? This was not a tale of a wise professor and a reckless student. This was a classic text, Pride and Prejudice. Batman, with absolute pride in his own deductions, had judged Schiller the killer. When that preconception was met with what seemed to be corroborating evidence, pride became a fatal impulse. And Schiller, in turn, held a prejudice against Batman, believing he had to be the calculating, infallible dark hero. Two men, each blinded by his own assumptions. Now it seemed Batman had learned his lesson. He saw with stark clarity that he was not omniscient. His reasoning could be warped by bias, and his impulses, driven by pride, were both deadly and foolish. He thought of the cold muzzle of his pistol pressed against Schiller's forehead, and was consumed by guilt and retroactive fear. The law cannot judge every criminal, he thought, but that should never be a justification for him to dispense judgment based on his own arrogance. In the shadows, Batman felt the cold Gotham rain seeping into his suit, a chill that went bone deep. He had just teetered on the edge of an abyss, a line from which, once crossed, there could be no return. He was grateful the price of his mistake had been a scar, not a life. He had to eliminate that possibility forever. There, in the cold and the dark, a thought forged itself into an unbreakable principle, a shackle he would bear for the rest of his life. From this day forward, no matter how monstrous the criminal, he would never kill. The men who murdered his parents might have been driven by greed or revenge. They had stolen 2 lives. But if he, Batman, the city's last hope, killed an innocent man based on a flawed judgment, he would single-handedly destroy the faith of all of Gotham. He would become a criminal more despicable than the one who had made him an orphan. The irony was profound. Schiller had never deeply considered the origins of the Batman doesn't kill rule in the comics. He had even, on countless occasions, cursed the character's refusal to act decisively. Why couldn't he just snap the necks of those lunatics and ensure they never escaped again? He had never imagined that in this world, the reason the young Batman would make this vow was because of him. With one careless action, he had failed to forge a pillar of spiritual strength for Batman, but had, by a twist of fate, cemented the most fundamental trait of his persona. Of course, Schiller had no idea how many times in the future he would regret today's meddling. As criminals broke out of Arkham time and again to shatter his peace, he would find himself screaming internally, "Bruce Wayne, for the love of God, just kill the goddamned clown." And the root of it all began today. It was his own damn fault. Hell's Kitchen. A window shattered inward, blasted from its frame. Shards of glass sprayed across the room as a piercing, cold wind flooded the dilapidated apartment. A silver-white suit of armor followed, roaring in on the whine of its engines. It performed a rapid circuit of the room, scattering papers in its wake, before landing with a heavy, resonant clang. Were the faceplate retracted, revealing Tony Stark's face, etched with disdain, he scanned the room, ran a metal, gloved finger across a tabletop, and examined the dust on its tip. "This place," he announced with undisguised contempt, "is a real dump." Schiller glanced at his hot coffee, now instantly chilled by the gale, and rolled his eyes with practiced subtlety. It seemed the kidnapping ordeal had only transformed Tony Stark from an incredibly annoying playboy into a normally annoying one. Unlike Bruce's carefully constructed FOD, Stark's persona was the genuine article. Still, through their few encounters, Schiller had already dissected him, precisely locating the 3 raw nerves that would make the genius detonate: his money, his masculinity, and the fact that he wasn't his father. Schiller raised his coffee cup with a deliberate slowness and began his therapy with the precision of a scalpel. "I'm aware my consultation fees are steep, but don't worry. You can continue complaining. The meter doesn't start until we address the actual issue." He took a sip of the cold coffee. Also, for the record, that gesture of disgust while wiping the table was more effete than a poodle in a rain bonnet. "I'll concede the accommodations are lacking. I'm not a billionaire like you. Then again, didn't Howard Stark get his start in a dilapidated garage much like this? A hardship I imagine you can't possibly comprehend, which is likely why Miss Potts was so worried about you." 3 direct hits. A muffled thump echoed from within the silver Mark Roman 2 armor, the distinct sound of Stark punching something. Oh, right, Schiller remembered. There were 2 other triggers, questioning his genius and calling Stark Industries products trash. Poor Mark Roman, too, and poor Jarvis. Forgive my bluntness, but is the quality of all Stark Industries products so fragile? And, of course, there was the final, most lethal blow of all, pity. But it's fine. Compared to the robotic rice cookers on the market, it's already a quantum leap forward. The words had barely left his mouth before the armor's engines roared to life. Without waiting for the faceplate to close, Stark shot back out through the shattered window in a messy, undignified retreat. Schiller let out a long, slow breath. The gloom brought on by Gotham had evaporated. He felt refreshed. It wasn't long before Stark returned, hovering impatiently outside the window. "You didn't answer your phone, so I had to fly to this garbage heap. You broke Jarvis. I was trying to upgrade him and discovered he's completely offline. Just gone. You're going to fix him. Seeing Schiller about to speak, Stark cut him off. Don't even think about charging me. You broke him. This has delayed my work on the new suit. Fix him, or I'll have Pepper fire you. Schiller considered it a reasonable demand. The Mark V was nowhere in sight, and with Jarvis on strike, the helpless genius probably couldn't even make his own coffee. Fine, Schiller said, standing and placing his hands on his hips. This one's on the house. Let's go. Stark snapped his fingers. Another suit of armor zoomed over, hovering before Schiller. Schiller and the cold steel construct stared at each other. He pointed at it. You don't seriously expect me to ride in that, do you? What's the alternative? You want to walk. A few minutes later, under a Russ Deaton bus stop sign in Hell's Kitchen, Tony Stark stood in his revolutionary silver-white suit of armor, shoulder-to-shoulder with Professor Schiller. I cannot believe this. Stark's voice, filtered through the helmet's speaker, was laced with despair. The maiden voyage of my groundbreaking armor is to wait for a rickety, smoke-belching bus. As if on cue, the bus screeched to a halt. Tony awkwardly maneuvered the Mark Roman II up the steps in a series of jarring movements. Schiller followed, giving the driver a familiar nod. He then offered a suggestion to Stark. You could just lift the bus and fly it there. Then why couldn't I just fly you there? What the hell is the difference? Stark roared. Schiller shrugged, the picture of innocence, because the image of Iron Man carrying a Hell's Kitchen bus through the sky would be magnificent. In Stark's lab, holographic data flowed like waterfalls. I don't know what you did, Stark said, his voice tense as he stood before a bank of consoles. Jarvis crashed. It's not a hardware issue. His systems are intact, but he refuses to work. I was about to give him a massive upgrade, but I can't have this happen again. If he shuts down every time someone asks a few questions, how is he supposed to function in combat? This isn't what I designed. When it came to his field of expertise, Stark was far more candid. I want Jarvis to be a true electronic lifeform, an all-powerful butler, the best in the world, but he seems to be trapped by those emotional logic problems you threw at him, even though I programmed him with a framework for emotional reasoning. Schiller walked to his side, gazing at the complex data streams. It's a paradox, Tony, he began. An artificial lifeform will always follow the logic of the optimal solution. But when the optimal solution conflicts with a master's command, your protocol dictates he obey the command, yet you also gave him sentience. When sensibility and rationality clash this violently, a machine cannot do what a human does. It cannot deceive itself. He can't make excuses to convince himself this is for the best. He can't choose to run or to forget. So, of course, he freezes. Stark waved a hand, annoyed. So can I just block similar logical conflicts, set up forbidden keywords? Schiller countered. Do you want him to be a true electronic life form? Of course, like us, with a soul. Then it's quite simple. To possess genuine emotion, Jarvis cannot circumvent these paradoxes, and if he cannot resolve them, he can never be considered truly alive. But he can't work when he's wrestling with these questions. I need him. A sliver of helplessness entered Stark's voice. Do I have to wait for him to process it, like a woman having a breakdown? When Miss Potts has a breakdown, do you just let her process it? Stark recoiled from Schiller's look of utter contempt. Hell no, I comfort her. What are you implying? Haven't you realized it yet, Tony? Schiller's tone turned serious. The decision is yours. All his cognitive dissonance originates with you. You created him with the baseline protocol that he must serve you. That, in itself, is not a human way of thinking. Schiller turned to face him, his questions coming faster, a dense drumbeat against Stark's psychological defenses. If I asked you the same questions, how would you answer? If your father were dying, and a decision you made could save him, but he vehemently opposed it, what would you do? If you honored his wish and he died, would you regret it? In his final moments, would he regret having you as a son? Would he resent you? If he resented you, would you blame yourself? Given a second chance, would you choose differently? If you defied his wish and saved him, and he blamed you for it, would you feel wronged? If he then regretted having you as a son because you saved him, would you resent him? Stark was silent. For the first time, the mention of his father elicited no explosive reaction. After a long moment, he spoke, his voice low but possessed of a newfound, unshakable certainty. "He wouldn't do that," Stark said. "He wouldn't stop me from saving him, and if I made a terrible mistake by saving him, he would choose to live, and then, together, we would do everything in our power to fix it, even if it cost him his life again." Then Schiller's voice was a clarion call. "Does Jarvis know that version of you?" He stepped forward and clapped a hand on Stark's shoulder. "Does he know that you are, in fact, very much like your father? Does he know that by truly understanding you, all of these questions can be answered? You cannot expect an electronic life form that operates on logic to proactively understand your past and your personality. What you haven't given him is, to him, a complete blank. If you want him to have a real life, the first thing you must do is the same thing your father once did for you." Schiller leaned in close to his ear and whispered the answer. "You have to give him a part of your own life. Your past, your personality, your way of thinking. Just like the birth of a child." Stark was silent for a long time, his brow furrowed in a rare display of intense thought. "I firmly believe there's no such thing as telepathy. Jarvis can't just know me out of thin air. It's almost technically impossible. You don't understand artificial intelligence." "I don't understand artificial intelligence," Schiller interrupted, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "But you, Tony Stark, don't understand people." Stark was once again rendered speechless, but Schiller pressed his advantage, his voice taking on an incendiary tone. "Humanity exists because of its intellect, but it is great because of its emotion. God created countless creatures, yet only we have endured, and you are challenging the authority of God. He never created a life form to rival humanity, but perhaps you can. This is a new frontier, Tony, a domain even your father never entered. You are on the verge of conquering a field where humanity has never before made progress. The creation of a being beyond human." Watching the fire of conquest rekindle in Tony Stark's eyes, Schiller knew he could probably do it. Of course, before leaving Stark Tower, he remembered to make one last call to Pepper Potts. "Miss Potts, good afternoon. Yes, it's about Mr. Stark. I've administered some of my proprietary exhilaration therapy. Yes, the effects are excellent, though there are some minor side effects. He's already buried himself in the lab. What? He even forgot about your meeting this afternoon. How terribly rude of him." "That's right, it's a necessary part of rebalancing his dopamine and adrenaline. He'll be like this for the next few days. His hormone levels will return to normal very soon. Yes, he'll be fine. Very, very soon." The so-called exhilaration therapy was nothing more than an elaborate psychological gambit engineered by Schiller. He had taken Stark's deeply buried arrogance, his desire to surpass his father, and his drive to conquer the unknown, bundled them together in a lavish gift box labeled Sense of Mission, and personally handed it to him. Pumped full of this top-shelf stimulant, Stark would launch himself into his laboratory like an ignited rocket, not to re-emerge for at least half a month. Schiller stroked his chin, a sudden realization dawning. When it came to applying psychological buffs to people, he seemed to possess a unique talent. It was a pity this talent couldn't be used on himself. His own feeble constitution rendered any number of enhancements useless. Ever since the rainy night he'd driven the young Batman into a depressive state of self-reflection, Schiller had returned to the Marvel Universe. Having injected Stark with his dose of motivation, Hell's Kitchen's Daredevil was busy evading his enemies, and the fledgling Spider-Man had only just acquired his powers, not yet having made his Official debut. For a rare moment, Schiller was at leisure. That night's profound mental chess match with Batman had unlocked a new chat opportunity. He was beginning to understand the pattern. Whenever he exerted a sufficiently deep influence on a core character in a given world, the system would reward him with the chance to connect with a new partner. Professor Charles was preoccupied with admissions for the Xavier Institute, and the young spider was too engrossed in the thrill of his new abilities to reply. A long, forgotten silence, bordering on boredom, began to settle in his mind. And so, he chose to use the opportunity. Instantly, a completely different interface unfolded in his mind, not the text-based chat windows he had with Charles or Peter, but a clear, inviting voice call interface. Schiller's gaze fell upon the avatar, and his pupils contracted slightly. The Sorcerer Supreme, the Ancient One. The Sorcerer Supreme, the Ancient One, has sent you a voice call invitation. Accept or decline. If he accepted, what would he even say? Schiller's fingertips tapped unconsciously on the tabletop. Finally, he chose to connect. There was no sound. In its place came a vast torrent of consciousness, a tide from the depths of the cosmos, flooding directly into his mind. He heard no syllables, yet he understood the meaning in an instant. Mysterious cosmic voice, from where do you hail? Schiller responded in kind, constructing a twisted and chaotic reply with his own thoughts. Who are you? Simultaneously, atop the Himalayas, within the hallowed halls of Kamar-Taj, the Ancient One, seated in deep meditation, frowned. She often used meditation to listen to the cacophony of cosmic voices, seeking omens and answers within the noise. Those sounds had always been disordered, static, chaotic echoes in the cosmic background radiation. But this time she had heard a clear, logical response. The Ancient One's guard went up immediately. Any sentient entity roaming the cosmos could be a future threat. Her psychic energy, like an invisible radar, swept the dimensional space around Earth in an instant, yet found no anomalous signatures. The voice had appeared from nowhere, without a trace. Schiller was well aware that the Ancient One was no fledgling Batman. She was the Sorcerer Supreme in her prime, her power immeasurable. But in this game, the greater the risk, the greater the reward. He sent another chaotic thought form. Answer me, answer me. The Ancient One's reply became firm and cold. Wherever you are from, whoever you are, stay away from Earth. Guardian of Earth, answer me. I am the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth. And who are you? Why do you emit a cosmic signal? The performance began. Schiller marshaled all his knowledge of criminal psychology and all his powers of imagination to weave a grand and terrifying lie. He disguised his consciousness as an ancient, insane, yet despairing entity. I come from Carcosa, by the shores of Lake Holly in the Hyades. The dark sun hangs high in the sky. Schiller hurled a stream of obscure, mad, and unspeakable information. The Ancient One knew the dangers of communicating with unknown cosmic entities, but she had to ascertain this one's intentions. Through the deliberately nonsensical exchange orchestrated by Schiller, the Ancient One painstakingly pieced together a disturbing narrative. A being calling itself Haster was imprisoned in a place called Carcosa, a place of Lake Holly and thick fog, and its enemies, a group of terrifying demon gods known as the Great Old Ones, were about to return to Earth on the day the stars are right. This Haster seemed unable to deal with its enemies directly and could only broadcast warning signals near Earth. The Ancient One didn't fully trust the entity, but the entire exchange was deeply strange. It made no demands, attempted no borrowing of power, and made no crazed pronouncements about ruling the universe. This pure, unrewarded warning actually caused her vigilance to waver slightly. The experienced Ancient One knew that the madness and chaos of a true cosmic demon could not be concealed. If this entity were dangerous, she would have immediately traced the network cable of the psychic link and annihilated it completely. But this being presented itself as mild and rational, yet filled with despair. Just as the Ancient One was about to probe further, to ask for more details, the connection abruptly ended. Schiller had perfectly mastered the art of leaving them wanting more. He rubbed his hands together and immediately selected the option to copy the Ancient One's abilities in the system interface. Magic ability low level has been equipped. As expected, Schiller began testing and found the ability to be a mixed bag. The good news was that he could cast spells without following the rules of the Marvel Universe, without paying a price, and with no side effects. The bad news was that it was indeed just low-level magic. He could only do 3 things: telekinesis within a 10-meter radius, fire magic capable only of lighting a cigarette or burning paper, and a short-range teleport with a 20-meter range. The teleport was, without a doubt, the most useful. Although 5 or 6 consecutive teleports left him dizzy from the mental strain, his brain buzzing with static, compared to the soul, sacrificing life, draining costs other sorcerers paid, it was a tremendous stroke of luck. More importantly, the ability ignored obstacles. He could be sitting comfortably in his clinic, and in the next second, appear in his apartment 2 streets away. The most immediate benefit of this was that SHIELD's agents could no longer keep up with him. The agents Nick Fury had long since infiltrated Hell's Kitchen until it was as porous as a sieve. But from the moment Schiller started teleporting, they were thrown into complete disarray. Surveillance showed Schiller never leaving his clinic, yet he would return from around the corner carrying a fresh carton of milk. They watched him walk into a subway station, only for the lights on the 2nd floor of his clinic to turn on a minute later. These ghostly movements completely shattered all of SHIELD's behavioral profiles on him and only strengthened Nick Fury's conviction. Schiller Rodriguez was an extremely dangerous and unfathomable individual. However, SHIELD wasn't the only one encountering strange phenomena. Over the past few days, Schiller had also noticed that something was amiss in his own clinic. It wasn't until the cheesecake he kept in the refrigerator was once again missing a large slice that he was finally sure of it. He had a thief in his clinic, a thief with a sweet tooth.